As Olalekan looked down, he saw a bottle containing a human figure on the ground. Terrified, he almost ran out, but then he realized this could be the clue he had been searching for. He then bent down to take a closer look. Lo and behold, he saw a tiny man jumping inside the bottle. While Delilah was deep in her rituals, chanting softly, the air thick with dark energy, Hafsat, her domestic staff, called out. Startled, Delilah's hands shook and 4 bottles fell from the shelves, shattering on the ground. Instantly, 4 tiny men were released, their spirits freed from the glass prisons. Over here, he called out. The others gathered around and saw 2 tiny men, cowering in fear. Hafsat was right. Immediately, she began packing her belongings, moving them hastily into her car. She knew she couldn't stay in Azare any longer. She had to leave before the villagers discovered her dark secret. Delilah's heart pounded as she sped away from Azare under the cover of darkness. She knew she had to stay ahead of everyone and find a safe haven where she could regroup and plan her next move. As dawn broke, she found herself in the bustling city of Kano. She checked into a discreet hotel using a false name to avoid detection. Before I dive into the main story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel for more interesting stories. Now, fasten your seatbelts as we dive into an extremely intriguing story. Once in her room, Delilah allowed herself a moment of rest. She couldn't afford to be complacent, but she needed to think. The encounter with the tiny men had shaken her, and she realized she needed a powerful ally. Her mind wandered to Alhaji Danhire, the wealthy and influential businessman who had shown interest in her. She decided to call him, hoping to lure him into her web. Meanwhile, Alhaji Danhire was at home, enjoying a meal with his wife, Kaltume. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. Seeing Delilah's name, he excused himself and went into the bedroom to take the call. Kaltume watched him with suspicion, but remained silent.
Alhaji, it's me, Delilah,
she said, her voice dripping with seduction.
Yes, I know. Truecaller revealed it.
Alhaji replied, trying to sound stern but unable to hide his curiosity.
I haven't heard from you since the last time you visited. Don't you want to get to know me better?
Delilah poured. Alhaji considered ending the call, but something in her voice captivated him. Just then, he heard footsteps approaching the room. Honey, Kaltume called out.
Text me your location and don't call my line again,
Alhaji said hurriedly, ending the call as Kaltume entered the room. Who was that? His wife asked, her eyes narrowing.
It was a business call, nothing important.
Alhaji lied smoothly, though he felt a pang of guilt. Back in a hotel room, Delilah smiled as she received Alhaji's message. She had him hooked. She needed to proceed carefully, ensuring that she could use his influence without drawing too much attention to herself. Alhaji, meanwhile, was torn between his attraction to Delilah and his loyalty to his wife. He decided to meet Delilah, but he needed to be cautious. He told his wife that he had urgent business in the city and left for the hotel, determined to find out more about this mysterious woman. When Alhaji arrived at the hotel, Delilah was waiting for him in the lobby. She looked stunning, her beauty even more striking than he remembered. He couldn't help but be drawn to her.
Alhaji, it's so good to see you,
Delilah said, her eyes twinkling with mischief.
It's good to see you too,
Alhaji replied, his resolve weakening.
Let's go somewhere private to talk.
They went up to Delilah's room, where she poured them both a drink. As they talked, Delilah subtly worked her charm, weaving a web of seduction around Alhaji. She needed him to trust her, to do her bidding without question.
Alhaji, I have a proposal for you,
Delilah said, leaning in closer.
I need a powerful ally, someone who can help me navigate the complexities of this city.
What do you mean?
Alhaji asked, captivated by her presence.
I need resources and protection,
Delilah replied.
In return, I can offer you something no one else can.
Alhaji was intrigued.
And what is that?
Delilah smiled, a hint of danger in her eyes.
Far beyond the wildest dreams, but you must trust me.
As the night wore on, Alhaji found himself falling deeper under Delilah's spell. He agreed to help her, unaware of the dark path he was being led down. While Delilah and Alhaji Danhire were drinking and laughing, the atmosphere grew increasingly intimate. Alhaji felt a powerful attraction towards Delilah. Her charm was almost impossible to resist. Just as he was about to kiss her, his phone rang, breaking the spell. It was his wife, Kaltumi. The sound of her voice was like cold water on his heated desires. It was as if scales fell off Alhaji's eyes. He immediately got up, his mind suddenly clear. I need to get home to my family now, he said abruptly, stepping away from Delilah. Before Delilah could ask why, Alhaji dashed out of the room, leaving her seething with frustration. What is wrong with me? He wondered as he drove back home, feeling a mix of relief and regret. Meanwhile, back in Agemo, Olalekan paid a visit to Mr. Wasiu's house. He was told that Mr. Wasiu has been hospitalized and had been in coma for some days. When Olalekan heard this, he realized it was around the same day he had fed a little man from a bottle. Olalekan called Mr. Wasiu's wife Olabisi aside. There is something I need you to see, but please, promise me you won't make a big deal out of this, as I am not sure where to go from here, he said. Olabisi, though worried, agreed. Olalekan looked around to ensure no one was watching. He then brought out the little Mr. Wasiu and showed him to Olabisi. In fear, the woman screamed and ran away, never having seen anything like it before. Quickly, Olalekan left before an unwanted scene could be created. As he drove away, Olalekan thought to himself, what do I do? Where do I go from here? He had been carrying the little man around, but everyone he showed it to freaked out. No one had been brave enough to take a closer look. He seemed to be the only one willing to confront the mystery. He thought of going to the police, but what exactly would he tell them? That he found a little man in an empty house formerly occupied by Delilah? It just sounded stupid and made no sense. Determined to find answers, he decided to visit a seer, Baba Ijebu, a renowned seer in the region, who was known for his deep knowledge of the supernatural. Olalekan hoped that Baba Ijebu would provide him answers to the strange events that had been unfolding. Arriving at Baba Ijebu's shrine, Olalekan felt a mix of fear and anticipation. He stepped inside, greeted by the smell of incense and the sound of distant chanting. Baba Ijebu, an elderly man with piercing eyes, sat on a mat, surrounded by various charms and objects of divination. What brings you here, my son? Baba Ijebu asked, his voice calm and knowing. Olalekan took a deep breath and recounted his experiences from finding the little man to the mysterious deaths in the village. He then revealed the tiny Mr. Wasiu to Baba Ijebu. The seer examined the tiny man closely, his expression growing more serious. This is dark magic, Baba Ijebu said finally. The woman you speak of, Delilah, she is a sorceress. She uses men for her dark rituals, trapping their spirits and draining their life force. Olalekan felt a chill run down his spine. What can we do to stop her? He asked urgently. Baba Ijebu looked thoughtful. To stop her, we must first destroy the source of her power. This will not be easy, as she is cunning and dangerous. But there is a way. You must gather the villagers and tell them the truth. Only together can you break the hold and save this man. Determined to save the village, Olalekan thanked Baba Ijebu and left the shrine. He knew that convincing the villagers would be difficult, but he had to try. With the tiny Mr. Wasiu as evidence and Baba Ijebu's guidance, he hoped they would finally put an end to Delilah's reign of terror. Olalekan drove straight to the king's palace. In the presence of the king and chiefs, he recounted his findings and then, with a deep breath, brought out the tiny Mr. Wasiu. The room fell silent as everyone stared in shock. But this time, no one ran away. Instead, they came closer, wanting to see the strange sight for themselves. "This is indeed Wasiu," said one of the chiefs, peering closely at the tiny man. The king, looking grave, took up the matter immediately. The police were informed and Delilah was declared wanted. However, Olalekan was still not satisfied. He felt a personal responsibility to find Delilah and put an end to her dark practices. Driven by determination, Olalekan started asking questions around the village, hoping to uncover any clues about Delilah's whereabouts. After persistent inquiries, he discovered that she had fled to Azare. Without wasting any time, Olalekan set off for Azare, determined to track her down. Back in Azare, the youth who had found the tiny men carried them to their village head, hoping he could make sense of the bizarre situation. The village head, an elderly and wise man, examined the tiny men with a mix of curiosity and concern. "This is no ordinary matter," he said gravely. "We must inform the authorities and the people. Everyone needs to be aware of this danger." The news of the tiny men spread quickly throughout Azare, causing panic and fear among the villagers. Meanwhile, Delilah, unaware of the brewing storm, had settled into a hotel in the city, plotting her next move. She thought she was safe, but Olalekan was hot on her trail. Back in the hotel room, Delilah felt a sense of unease creeping over her. It was as if invincible eyes were watching her every move. She opened her box to check on the bottles, ensuring they were all intact and in place. They were, but the unsettling feeling persisted. She wondered if some of the spirits were gaining power. She needed to visit the nearest river to regain control over the dark magic. Moments later, Delilah packed her belongings and checked out of the hotel. This time, she didn't dress in her usual white attire. She wore a black hijab to avoid being noticed. She drove out into the bustling streets of the city and approached a man hawking drinks. She asked him if he knew of any river nearby. He nodded and directed her towards one. As she was about to enter her vehicle, Olalekan drove past. Through the rear view mirror, he noticed the black jeep, a sense of familiarity tugging at his memory. Olalekan stopped his car. He stepped out and started walking towards the black jeep. But before he could reach it, the vehicle roared to life and Delilah drove off. Frustrated and exhausted, Olalekan walked back to his car. Just as he was about to get in, the young man selling drinks approached him. "Oga, you won't go river too?" the man asked. Annoyed, Olalekan waved him off and started his engine. But as he was about to drive away, the man's question struck a chord. He quickly reversed and drove back towards the young man. "Yes, I won't go to the river. Which way is it?" Olalekan asked. The man directed him, and without wasting another moment, Olalekan sped off, headed towards the river. Delilah was driving to the river when her phone rang. Seeing Alhaji Danhire's name on the screen, she pulled over to take the call. "I just want to apologize about the other day," Alhaji Danhire said. "Please, where are you? I checked the hotel but was told you have checked out." Delilah sensed foul play. "I'll call you back," she said curtly and ended the call. Something felt off. Why would he want to see her so urgently? She quickly dropped the phone, started her car and drove off. When Olalekan arrived at the river, everything seemed calm. Frustrated, he turned to leave, but then he noticed a black jeep approaching the river. He recognized the car and quickly dove into the bush to hide. He watched as Delilah stepped out of the car, dragging a box along with her. "Is that not Delilah?" he whispered to himself from his hiding spot. Delilah reached the riverbank and began her ritual. She took out the bottles and started making incantations. The river surged up and she began to drain the energies from the bottled men, an act that would make her immensely powerful. Olalekan watched in awe and horror, realizing the extent of her dark powers. He pulled out his phone to record the scene, but then felt an urge to act. "Delilah!" he screamed, his voice echoing across the riverbank. Startled, Delilah turned towards the sound. At that moment, the bottle shattered and the water calmed. Realizing she had been discovered, Delilah didn't wait to see who had called her name. She quickly ran back to her car. Olalekan dashed to his vehicle and began chasing after her. The chase was intense, with Delilah weaving through the narrow roads and Olalekan close on her tail. Delilah's heart pounded as she sped through the winding paths, but Olalekan's determination kept him close. She knew she had to lose him or risk everything. As Olalekan drove, he quickly called the police in Agemo and informed them that he had found Delilah in Kano. Immediately, a call was put across to the Kano police station, which swung into action. All the police checkpoints and stations were notified, and the whole of Kano was out on the lookout for Delilah. The police tracked Olalekan's location, allowing them to pinpoint Delilah's whereabouts and gave her a hot chase. Delilah, noticing the heavy police presence and realizing she was being pursued, knew the end was near. However, she had one final mission: to return to the water. If she died outside of it, she would be lost forever. But if she made it to the water, she would have a chance to return, even in death. She drove furiously towards the river, and upon arrival, she abandoned her car and sprinted towards the water. The police, now on foot, ordered her to stop and surrender, or they would shoot. Delilah smiled, knowing she was so close to her sanctuary. Ignoring their commands, she dove into the river. The police opened fire, and Delilah was shot from behind. However, she achieved her goal. She died in the water. With her death, all the little men she had trapped vanished, and their bodies died an actual death, freeing their souls. Even though Delilah's physical form was destroyed, because she died in the water, her dark spirit lingered, waiting to return and wreak havoc again through different bodies. The police, along with Olalekan, stood by the river, realizing the true extent of Delilah's powers and the darkness she harbored. Her death brought temporary peace, but the legend of Delilah would continue to haunt those who strayed from the path of loyalty and integrity. Moral lesson: in our world today, many families face hardship and blame it on the economy, not realizing that unfaithfulness could be the true cause of their troubles. Like Peter, Aremu, Musa, and the other men who faced severe hardship before they died, infidelity can bring devastating consequences. Alhaji Danhire not only escaped becoming a victim thanks to the presence and love of his wife, Kaltumi. It is crucial to stay faithful to one's spouse. Faithfulness builds trust, love, and stability in a relationship, while infidelity leads to pain, suffering, and destruction. There are many Delilahs out there, temptations that seem attractive but ultimately bring ruin. Beware of these temptations and stay true to your spouse. Let this story be a heart-touching reminder. Cherish and honor your spouse, for the strength of a relationship is a fortress against the hardships of life. Staying faithful is not just a moral duty, but a foundation for a happy, blessed, and secure home. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more interesting stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the bell notification icon, like, share, and drop your thoughts about the story in the comment section. You can also check out these videos here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.